Hey folks, the Comics Kid 2099 here to discuss an episode of a superhero animated series. Today I'll be talking about the new Batman Adventures episode, Mean Seasons. If you haven't seen the episode, you should do so because I will be spoiling things in this review. And if you have seen the episode, but it's been a while, then listen to me quickly sum up the episode before I get into the meat of the review. Either way, here comes a plot summary. A lady in a mask is kidnapping folks because she used to be a model until these people determined that she was too old and they wanted to go for a younger model. Now she wants revenge. Batman and Batgirl stop her, cue credits. So I never really cared that much for the Calendar Man. While almost all of Batman's enemies are built on some kind of gimmick, most of them were able to survive into the present day because creators were able to either transform that gimmick into something interesting to build more stories out of, or they were able to get rid of the tired and worn out gimmick while still managing to keep the character interesting and usable. But I never felt that the Calendar Man was one of those characters. If you take away his Hannibal Lecter-esque role in The Long Halloween, I doubt many people would even know who he is. So even though I don't care for that character in the comics, I was surprised to find out that I really liked the retooled version of the character used in this episode, now a calendar girl. Maybe because they basically ignored the gimmick of he only commits crimes on certain holidays and each crime is retooled to match the holiday that he is operating on. Instead, they take the very broad concept of time, which is integral to the concept of the calendar, and they add it to a character who feels she is outmoded by others. Now, admittedly, this isn't a character you could use more than once, even if they didn't basically give her an emotional meltdown at the end of the episode. The idea of her trying to get revenge on the people who took away her livelihood because they thought she was too old is something that can only really fuel one episode. But still, if done right, it can be a great episode, and I think it was done right in this case. What's unfortunate about this episode is that the people the Calendar Girl is kidnapping are portrayed as being villainous for dropping the Calendar Girl in favor of younger models. But their position is kind of understandable too. While I don't know much about modeling at all, I'll take a look at this from an entertainment perspective. If you're casting a TV show or a movie, if you're looking at it as something that might have franchise potential, you don't want to cast someone who is too old because, at the risk of sounding crass, they're that much closer to death. The younger you cast, theoretically, the more movies or episodes you can squeeze out of them. Yes, it's a very commercial way of looking at it, but it's not an entirely invalid perspective. Not to mention, Calendar Girl trying to get revenge because she lost her job is also a very commercial motivation. We also get to see the idea of casting away the old and replacing them with a younger, sexier version in a very small subplot at Wayne Enterprises. Some guy named Bernie has turned 65 and is forced to retire because that's the policy. Bruce didn't even know that Bernie was 65, and as he is dealing with the Calendar Girl stuff, he decides to change the policy so that you can stay with the company as long as you are able to do the job. Now that sounds fine and dandy, but realistically, I don't think that it would be this simple. It's harsh, but there's a reason many companies and businesses have that mandatory retirement age. 65 may not seem that old to some people, but that's no longer the age of a spring hen. I can only imagine the reason Wayne Enterprises set up the mandatory retirement clause is because not too long after the age of 65, any given employee is going to start making mistakes. They might be small mistakes, or they might be huge, and they might cost the company. Like I say, in theory, it sounds great for Bernie that now he can stay with the company until he's 150 years old. But staying as long as you can do the job only opens up Wayne Enterprises to a whole mess of trouble. And that brings me back to the argument of getting rid of someone because they're too old. Is it wrong to say, Bernie, you've served us well for the last 35 years, but we would rather give you a nice retirement and pension now before you really mess things up as you grow old and senile, and then we would have to fire you instead of giving you the option of retirement? It's a discussion that has merits on both sides, but I don't think that there's really an easy answer. Another reason I think this episode is so great is that, unfortunately, it's still pretty topical today. Again, let's look at this from the entertainment perspective, specifically in the realm of superhero movies. Robert Downey Jr., everyone's favorite Iron Man, is, as of this recording, 51 years old, and he plays a male lead in a superhero franchise. Marissa Tomei, who plays the most recent iteration of Aunt May, and Diane Lane, who plays Martha Kent, are also both 51 years old, and they play the maternal figures of younger, hotter, sexier superheroic figures. They are the same age as a man who is allowed to be the superhero, but they are relegated to the role of matron, and aren't even allowed to be Wonder Woman or Black Widows or whatever superheroic figure you would cast them in. Now, are they bitter because their peer is a star while they are only supporting players? Or are they just thankful they got to be part of billion-dollar productions and make some handsome cash to play the still very attractive motherly figures in the life of a superhero? Who knows? I haven't asked them or sought out interviews where someone else asked them. But sadly, this episode where a woman feels cast out because she's growing old while someone else exactly her age gets to continue what he's doing, it's not that far off from where we are today. So those are my thoughts on this episode. But what did you guys think of this episode and of the review? If you liked it, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And if you did like it, you're in luck because I do this sort of video every Saturday. And I also do other videos throughout the week, so be sure to check those out if you're interested. In the meantime, I'll see you guys in the future. Have a great rest of the day.